This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon. We understand that people have to use the bathroom and have to go to work and have to, have to go to school. We understand that that's a normal thing that most people do. But as a transgender person, by virtue of you being transgender, especially when you don't pass or don't want to pass, right? You're viewed as being forceful and being pushy. And that's the reality of it. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining me here for yet another episode. Some of you guys are brand new here, so you don't know that we upload these videos every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I appreciate those of you guys who are here and you're new, but I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what this is before we get into this video, because I know some people might be thrown off because a lot of you guys came here for, some scripted content, but this is the thing that I do on my channel that's unscripted. So I just want to explain that True Tea is supposed to be deliberately unscripted. It is kind of the thing that exists on my channel to give more nuance than I think I tend to give in scripted videos. When I write a script, obviously, especially for YouTube, I'm trying to summarize my points. I'm trying to be as concise as possible. So there's a lot of stuff that I don't really get to say. And I feel like the past couple of videos I've done on this YouTube channel have not that it's suffered from that, but they've been like they've been inspired by the video that I uploaded that's scripted that a lot of you guys have been watching. And there's just so many things I wish I could have said in that video. So that's kind of what these videos are about. So yeah, True Tea is all about, sharing your true fresh brew, whether you're right, whether you're wrong, either way you're honest. And that's just kind of what this is. So if you're into that, and you are new to this channel, I would highly suggest that you subscribe so you can get these videos every single week in your subscription box. So anyway, we're gonna be having a conversation about pushy transgender people. But before we do, let's go to our kitchen and grab ourselves something to drink. Now, I am drinking the very last of my Peach Tranquility tea. I put all of my Tivana tea in like one little canister because I only have that much left, really. Some of you guys don't know this, but I do now have a P.O. box. So if you guys are interested in sending me tea or really sending me anything, someone sent me this really, really cute little little stuffed parrot, and I just like sitting him right over here, looking all cute over there on the perch. If you guys like sending me stuff or you want to send me stuff, I love getting packages. So if you're interested, this is my P.O. box. You can send me basically whatever. I will try to do my best to show the stuff that I receive in these videos that I do. And also there's a bunch of posters here that people sent me through my Amazon wish list. This Cowboy Bebop poster, this Dracula poster, this cat poster over in the corner. Thank you guys so much for sending me stuff, those of you guys who already have. So anyway, we've been rambling on. Let's get into the video and ramble some more about something that I think is, kind of an important conversation. So let me take a sip of this tea and let's get into this video. So I wanted to have a conversation with you guys about an accusation that I hear quite a bit from cis people. And it's something that I have a certain reaction to just because of the way that I've personally lived my life. And so I wanted to really talk about it because, like I said, it does kind of relate to the J.K. Rowling video that I just did. So yeah, let's get into it. I wanted to talk about the idea that transgender people are pushy, are forceful, and are trying to make it so that people can't just say what they really feel, right? Especially when it comes to in the workplace, right? So we're gonna talk about a lot of stuff in this video, but I wanted to start out this video by saying a couple of things, right? Like I talked about in my last video about stealth and how transphobia pushes people to be stealth. I made the decision in 2014 to no longer be invested in stealth in the way that I used to. And I did that because I wanted to come to YouTube and I wanted to sort of have conversations from the perspective that I have. And it's a perspective that I feel is very, very, very underrepresented. A lot of people having conversations about trans life online are not in the stage of life that I'm currently in, where, I transitioned over a decade ago. I don't really live a life in my daily life where I'm finding myself always going up against, different trans things. I often forget that I'm transgender. I have a lot of people in my life personally who don't even know that I'm trans. Some people who do know, but they forget as well, and that's kind of my life, right? I'm not a person who in my real life is finding myself fighting against a lot of these sort of transphobic things that we talk about on this channel. So I'm saying all that to say that I think when you're watching my videos, you should understand that while I may be on here very, very invested in a lot of these conversations, and that's why we're having them, my daily life isn't truly affected by the discourse, and I think in the way that a lot of other people's is. You know, I'm not going to listen to you come to me and say, well, you're just a man and you should do this and da 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 da, and then like suddenly change what I'm doing or change how I'm living. I can have a lot of these conversations the way that I'm having them because I have, frankly, the privilege to have a life where I'm not reminded of my transness every 3 minutes, you know. So but that being said, that hasn't always been the case. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I do think that it is a very interesting perspective that I think people misunderstand about transgender people, right? Like I said, I decided to come on the internet to share my sort of perspectives about trans life. And as I say it in almost every video, I've been making these videos since I was 15 years old. I'm 29 years old now. And one of the things that the internet has always been really great for is it's allowed me to have a space for me to vent. There was a time where I came on this very YouTube channel and I was dealing with transphobic stuff. I was dealing with all of these different ways in which I wasn't totally quite fitting into society. And I came on here and I vented and I was in pain and I was angry and I said what I had to say because I felt like no one else would listen to me. And this was the only space for me to say those sort of things, right? I've talked about this in previous videos, but a lot of the reason why I started a YouTube channel was because I felt in my personal life, no one really cared about what I was experiencing. And I always felt like I would be burdening people by talking about the frustration and pain and the things like that. So I came onto YouTube because I was like, well, people can opt into watching my stuff and listening to me bitch and moan, as opposed to me feeling like I'm just forcing them to listen to me. You know what I mean? So for me, what I am observing right now is there are a lot of people who have translated transgender people coming on the internet and expressing pain and frustration to transgender people are forcing us and pushing us to do certain things, right? Here's the reality of being a transgender person. And I think we should also establish this really early on in this video, even though we're about 7-8 minutes in. I know that for some cis people, transgender people are overrepresented, right? A lot of people feel like trans people are so present, they're everywhere, they're all around. Oh my gosh, I can't go anywhere without hearing about this trans stuff. So you translate that to be that transgender people are A, accepted, and are B, in a position right now socially where they have a lot of power, right? But the reality is, and I've said this in the past couple of videos that I've made, and I know that there are people who disagree with me, but this is just what I feel doing the work I've been doing for the past decade plus. The reality is that the vast majority of people do not accept and will never accept transgender people. And for me, I feel that way because I've seen how this discourse has gone. I've talked about this in the past couple of videos I've made, but for me, it will always be baffling that we spend so much time talking about the fucking bathroom, that we spend so much time talking about something that I've done inconsequentially, again, for the past over a decade, right? The fact that we're still having that conversation, and it's the conversation that, by the way, we've been having since I've been making content on here, says to me how transgender acceptance is just at its like, it's at its baby stages. Right? So funny, I was just talking to you guys about like why I started blogging. And as we were talking about this, I remembered a story that I had when I was in college, because you guys know that I started my transition in college. Well, I didn't start my transition in college. When I went to college, I identified as genderqueer. I got to college, realized that I had the ability to like re-examine and reassess who I was, and recognized that I was far more binary than I initially thought that I was, which was kind of disappointing. You know, I thought I was more interesting than that, but it is what it is. I'm just a woman, and that just kind of is what it is. But anyway, I remember when I was dealing with this with my classmates, it was really it was a very, very hard thing because I went to a summer school program before I went to actual Cal Arts, right? I went to CISA, if you're familiar with the school. I went to CISA and I knew all these people. And you know, when I met those people, I was a very radical, queer, outspoken person who didn't give a fuck what pronouns you called me. You know, call me this, call me that. It is what it is. That was the perspective I used to have, right? And then when I went away to college and really started to understand who I was, it really started to bother me that people would use certain pronouns with me and use a certain name with me. It really, really, really bothered me, right? And I had this experience in class one day where this was, I think either my sophomore or my junior year. I don't remember. We had this animation teacher that I absolutely hated. But the one thing that he did was when I was in his class, because it was this weird thing where like my animation teacher, who was shitty, he only knew me as how I had presented myself to him in that period of time. But my classmates had known me for, years at this point, right? When this animation teacher saw me and interacted with me, he, without even thinking about it, used female pronouns, right? And it just was what it was. And I remember sitting in class one day and listening to people, giggle whenever the teacher would refer to me with she and her pronouns. And it was such a bizarre thing for me because he was doing the right thing by using the right pronouns, right? And I don't know if he knew that I was trans or just got a sense, I don't know, but he was just referring to me in she and her pronouns, which, side note, was how most people, because I was in college, I definitely did this thing, and this is kind of a theme throughout my life, where I stopped hanging out with people at school as much as people outside of the school, because people outside of the school were respecting my pronouns. They were calling me by the right name. They were not misgendering me all the time. And so because of that, I felt more comfortable with those people than I did at school. I didn't like having to have these contentious conversations with my classmates about these are my pronouns, this is my name, because I just, when you're in a situation where people just accept you and don't challenge your gender and aren't constantly trying to figure your shit out, it's just a lot happier for you, just a lot healthier and happier for you to be in that environment, as opposed to a place where you're constantly finding yourself at odds with someone fighting over whether or not your gender is valid. I'm going to pick the one that makes the most sense, right? But anyway, I was really hurt by my classmates laughing at my professor properly gendering me, right? And back then I had a blogger, account, and I wrote this really angry, scathing blog post. And I used to post my blogs onto my Facebook page, and so all my classmates were able to see it. And I was just so pissed. I was so pissed off by the fact that my classmates were laughing at me, were not understanding that this is my name and this is my pronoun. So I kind of wrote this post where I essentially announced that this is who I am. These are my pronouns. This is my name. If you respect me, if you want me to be around you, you will call me these things, right? Now, that was online. That was on the internet, where I had no, interaction with someone face to face, right? Online, it sounds really, really aggressive, but in person, the reality is I was slinking down in my chair, listening to my classmates laugh at me, which, side note, being in college, when I would deal with stuff like that, when I would deal with like these little sort of annoying, transphobic moments, it would ruin class for me. I couldn't focus because I was just dealing with the fact that there were people who were having an opinion period about my transness. It fucked me up. It fucked with my mind, right? But anyway, so I was, in my real life, not going to be a person who pushed anyone into call me by my right name, call me by my right pronouns. Because here's the thing, and this is why I sometimes find the pushy transgender thing to be such a weird thing, right? Like I said at the top of this video, most people don't support transgender people. Most people don't agree with transgender people. They may pantomime support and allyship, but they don't. Transgender people are very, very, very aware that if they stood up for themselves, if they say, hey, that's not my name, hey, those aren't my pronouns, we know we're not gonna get support. We know that the moment we start talking about that, we're gonna get into this huge debate about your biology and what genitalia do you have, and da-da-da-da-da. So in real life, most transgender people are going to be kind of sheepish. They're going to be kind of quiet. They know and are aware of the fact that their gender is not going to be respected. They're aware of the fact that if they stand up for themselves, they're not going to have backup. They're not going to be able to, have that, conversation and have it go in the right way. Right. And it's what's so funny to me is a lot of people, and this is something I think people don't understand truly. A lot of people don't get that for most transgender people, they just want to be able to live a life where their transness is not the most immediately important thing in every social interaction that they have. I'm gonna repeat that. Most transgender people do not want to live a life where the most immediate thing in every single social interaction they have is their transness. Right? That's kind of a thread that I think was missing in a couple of the previous videos that I made, because to some people, your perspective is like reading transgender people talk about their trans shit online is transgender people just want to throw it in our face all the time. They just want to be pushy, They just want to blah, 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 blah. No, most transgender people want to be able to navigate the world without their transness being an obstacle. They want to be able to go to school, to go to work, to, go out without having to always have conversations about pronouns, without always having to have conversations about gender. They would like for their gender to be a thing that, people don't put as much focus on, right? But as it currently stands, we have all of these people rallying against transgender people. We have all these people rallying against what transgender people are trying to do in terms of living their lives, right? And so you're going to have people going online, venting and being upset and talking about their experiences, right? And that's being translated as these transgender people are trying to force their lifestyles on us. They're trying to push, they're being pushy, they're being forceful, biology this, biology that, And I think that people are really just missing it. They're not understanding that if the real world that transgender people lived in was not one that was so fraught with obstacles that made them focus on their transness, they wouldn't go online and bitch and moan about being disrespected all the time, right? For a lot of transgender people, the internet is a place for us to vent. It is a place for us to say the shit that we're too afraid of saying in our daily lives, right? And sure, you're probably seeing more of it than you used to because we're having more conversations about trans people. I talked about this in previous videos, but back when I was coming up as a trans person, it was kind of unheard of for you to be an outward, open transgender person. The focus for most people was stealth and fading in the background and not quite being a person that people knew. That was what was the focus, right? But now we have all of this discourse around whether or not transgender people should do this, whether or not transgender people should do that. And so of course we're going to see more of that now, right? But the reality for most transgender people is that they're not living in a situation where they're being accepted, where they're being embraced, where people are using their pronouns correctly, where they are using the right name. The reality for most transgender people is they go through their life in every single space and they're being antagonized at every single moment, at every single point, right? This is a conversation that we had when there was a video of the trans person in GameStop, right? And we can have different sort of debates about that person, whatever. But when I saw that video, what I understood as a transgender person was what probably really happened in that situation is, this is somebody who they get misgendered all the time, probably because of what they look like and how they carry, whatever, right? They get misgendered all the time, constantly, right? And I'm sure in every sort of situation they're in, most situations they're in, when they get misgendered, they nod. Here's the thing, I'm gonna get back to this, but I want to make this point really clear. A lot of people talk about non-binary people and how it's so silly for non-binary people to want to use singular they, if that's the pronoun that they use. Most non-binary people are very aware of the fact that they're going to be misgendered, right? So because of that, they don't have the anticipation that you're going to just look at them and know that they use singular they pronouns, right? They get that that's the case. They get that that they're not going to be respected in that way, right? So this idea that they're just trying to force everybody to use certain pronouns, it's a misunderstanding of the discourse and the conversation around it, right? Most transgender people that kind of land on this, if you misgender me, it's understandable, right? But if I tell you, these are my pronouns, this is my name, This is how I would like to be referred to. And you, upon having that information, decide, oh no, I'm going to call you what I want to call you. That's just being a jerk. That's just being a jerk, right? And so most transgender people, most non-binary folks are not going to get upset with you for misgendering them. I mean, it might hurt. You know, a lot of people, their dysphoria, I mean, you get misgendered and it sucks. It fucking sucks. You know, I haven't been misgendered in a very long time. At least I've been deliberately misgendered by people who were being transphobic, but I haven't been like misgendered on accident, you know, because that's when it hurts, is when it's on accident. I've been misgendered on accident in quite some time. But it does suck when it happens, right? But most transgender people are aware that it's going to happen, right? So they're not going to be raging at you. You know, like going back to the GameStop person, you saw what I believe was the culmination of this person being misgendered at every single point. And then the point that they got recorded was the point where they had had it. They'd had it. They had been misgendered throughout the day. And they just had it, you know, and that was their reaction. Not defending it necessarily, but I'm saying that's how some transgender people end up feeling, where they find themselves so frustrated, so annoyed by the fact that at every turn they find themselves having to defend their transness, that they react, right? Going back to the workplace stuff, I've had a lot of conversations about people talking about people transitioning in their workplace, and they're aware that, you know, for example, trans women, because we always talk about trans women. We never talk about trans men. We never talk about trans DFAB people. It's always trans women, right? But for example, there are people who have a trans woman in their workplace, right? That trans woman comes out and says, hey, I want my pronouns are this, my name is that. And these people who work with this person, they'll say this, they'll say, look, I support transgender rights. I support transgender people, but this trans woman who says that her name is Alexis and her pronouns are she and her is a biological man. And so I personally am going to refuse to call her by that name or call her by those pronouns. So my interactions with that person will always be me saying he and him and calling him Alex instead of Alexis, right? For me, this is one of the most baffling things, right? You can't on one hand say, I support trans people and I think transgender people are A-okay. And then also say, however, you know, I know that this person wants to be called this and wants to be called that, but I'm going to, you know, refer to them as this because of their biology. One of the things that to me is also so baffling about these conversations is that while yes, there is some degree in which our social interactions are biologically inspired, right? The vast majority of time that we interact with each other, we're not citing biology. We're not, you know, this idea that we should treat people according to their biology is very bizarre to me personally. And I think maybe it's just because I'm transgender, because I was a person who from a very young age was treated as a cis woman, because I'm a person who, despite my biology, I don't currently live a life where I'm fighting for people to accept me as a woman. It's just one of those generally accepted things that I never think about unless I'm making a video for you guys, right? I think because I live that way, I'm very intimately aware that biology isn't necessarily the thing that infinitely defines how we interact with each other. And so this idea that when you have a transgender person working in your workplace, that because you know that they're trans and because they said that, you know, they've come out to you and they've said, hey, this is this and that you're just going to go out of your way to use the name, you know, they don't want to hear, and also use the pronouns, you know, that they don't want you to use. Like, you're just being an asshole. Like, to me, you're just being a jerk. And for me, you can't on one hand say you support transgender people, you're here for transgender rights, but then you live like that. Like, to me, these things don't connect. I wish that people would stop being, this is gonna sound really weird. I wish people would stop being so afraid of just being transphobic. You know, like for me, again, I don't call a lot of things transphobic. I don't think that every single, like, look, I don't, knock my knee and suddenly it's transphobia. That's not how I feel. But like, to me, that's very simple transphobia. Do you know what I mean? Like, you going out of your way to call a transgender person by a name and pronoun that you know they don't like, that you know they don't identify as, that you know makes them feel a certain way. That's just really clear-cut transphobia. It just is. I don't think you can say, well, you know, I'm totally for transgender people, but I'm going to create this environment in the work. Like, look, I work for myself, okay? And I've worked for myself for a very long time, right? I worked for myself largely because I wasn't able to get a job when I was younger and trans and things like that. So I just decided that I would become a person who, you know, had their own business, worked for themselves, did this sort of thing. That's why I've been doing it for so long, right? Because I wanted to avoid all of that workplace transphobic bullshit, right? Because in all reality, when I was younger, I felt so afraid of dealing with transphobia in the workplace that I said, you know what, I'm going to try to avoid it as much as possible. And I'm fortunate that it's worked out for me, that I love my job, especially in the past 2 years. I've been really, really taking my job seriously and really loving it, right? But most trans people aren't going to be able to do that. Most transgender people are not going to be able to work independently. So they have to work in the workplace. They have to work in the work. We understand that people have to use the bathroom and have to go to work and have to, you know, have to go to school. We understand that that's a normal thing that most people do. But as a transgender person, by virtue of you being transgender, especially when you don't pass or don't want to pass, right? You're viewed as being forceful and being pushy. And that's the reality of it, right? I know that for some people, you see all this shit, you see all this stuff online, you can't help but feel that people are just The reality though is, most of us are just building up the confidence to leave the fucking house, right? Most of us are just building up the confidence to just leave the fucking house. I spent years not going anywhere because I was so paralyzed by the idea of what going out and being a trans person would be. I mean, there were times where I would only go out at night. There were times where I would only go out in like a hoodie, right? Like there were times where I was so afraid of living and being myself because I knew that transphobia existed and that it could kill me, right? The idea that trans people are just across the board pushy and forceful and trying to get you to feel a certain way is just so bizarre to me, because I know that most transgender people are just building up the confidence to leave the fucking house as themselves. So anyway, I think I've said all I could say. I've said a lot in this video. I know this video is probably super long. Oh my gosh, it's very, very long video. But you know, this is what I wanted to say. I felt like it was really important for me to add this to the narrative, because again, the narrative that that people have about transgender people and like what I know about transgender life is just so night and day. And it's been a very strange thing for me to reconcile. So I just wanted to share that perspective and hopefully it was helpful to someone. So yeah. Anyway, if you made it through this entire video, if you watched this entire video, first of all, thank you. You are awesome. But if you made it through this video, put this emoji in the comment section. I will appreciate you doing that. I always do. You guys are fucking awesome for, you know, putting the emojis and leaving them. I know last week I forgot it, but you know, this week, hopefully I will remember to put this in post. So yeah. Anyway, on that note, I will see you guys next week. Right now, you are looking at 2 videos that you can watch if you would like to continue to sip true tea with me on this channel. Like I said, we do this every single Tuesday, but here's some previous ones if you want to watch those instead. In the bottom, there's ways for you to send me tips, and there's also my PO box if you want to send me anything. I could definitely use some more tea. So anyway, on that note, I will see you guys next Tuesday. Bye.